Greetings everybody and welcome to Gizmo Labs, where I show you all the tips and tricks you need to become a pro at grounded playgrounds. In this tutorial, we're going to be going ahead and looking at the two types of spawning methods available to you in playgrounds, which are static creature spawns and the creature spawner Gizmo. And we're going to look in depth at how these things work. So, without any further ado, let's get started! The first thing we're going to take a look at in this tutorial is static creature spawners. Now, you can go ahead and find all of these static spawners right here in your build menu. So just look for this red ant head, and then you can see all of the creature spawns are right here for you to go ahead and choose from. You can spawn in any creature that you like from the game, including bosses, and even including the koi fish and all of the orc creatures currently available. To go ahead and make these guys spawn when you go ahead and start your game, all you need to do is select the creature you want. Let's go ahead and select the Orb Weaver Jr., and then you'll see it will go ahead and give you a kind of an outline of where it's going to end up. So what you're going to do is going to select the place where you want it to come in, and then just go ahead and put it down. And then you can see it will just kind of like stand there, just look around a bit. It won't really do too much, but you might see them animating every now and then. But yes, your player will actually be able to go ahead and interact with these, jump on these and everything as well. And as soon as you go ahead and start up your game, you'll see that this creature spawns right in. And as you can see, he took a nice bite out of me, and I don't really want to die. Now, the only limitation with these spawners is if you go ahead and kill this creature, there is no way, unfortunately, to go ahead then and do anything with that information. There is also no way to make these creatures respawn over a certain amount of time, so these spawners are essentially only useful for one-time use in your world. But there is a gizmo to go ahead and cover that, and that is the creature spawner. So let's go ahead and have a look at it, and I'll show you exactly how it works. The creature spawner gizmo essentially does exactly the same thing as a static spawner. You can go ahead and look at this thing, and if you press your E key on the PC, you can go ahead and access all of the different types of creatures that you can spawn in. And as you can see, these are exactly the same creatures as you would get from just using a static spawner. However, it also offers you a bit more control on how many of these things will actually spawn in. So for example, if I was to go ahead and say worker ants, and I wanted like 3 of these guys to spawn in, I could go ahead and select my worker ant here. You'll see there's like a little exclamation mark that appears above that, and then you can go ahead and set your amount down below. Then all you gotta do is go ahead and find a way to activate this thing. Now, in order to activate it, you can go ahead and do anything. You can make it activate from a link, from any kind of thing that will go ahead and fire a signal. So for example, if I was to go ahead and say step on a pressure plate, and obviously I need to set this weight to low, I could then go ahead and make this go ahead and spawn in these creatures. So if we go ahead and now to test this out, you'll see that when I step on this, it'll go ahead and then spawn in 3 worker ants all at once, which is really, really cool. Now, sometimes you might want to have creatures spawned in the world before the player gets to an area. For example, say if you're working on an adventure map and you want to have some kind of overworld spawns, and say if you're working on like an anthill and you want to make sure that all the ants have been spawned in before the player gets there. One thing you can go ahead and do is use a timer. Now, the timer, you can essentially go ahead and make it so that it starts on play and it has a 1-second delay, and link that timer directly into your spawner. And essentially, this will do very similar thing to what the static spawner did. You'll essentially start your world, and then just like that, the creatures will spawn in without the player actually having to do anything, which is super nice as well. Now, you can also go ahead and fire events from a spawner when all the creatures from that volume have been killed. Note that this event does not fire per creature kill, but only when all the creatures that this spawner has spawned in will go ahead and has gone ahead and been killed. So for example, let's just go ahead and put down something very simple like a mantlight like this. We'll go ahead and put down a mantlight just like that, and I'm also going to go ahead and link the output of this spawner to this light. You can see then that it says when all creatures have been killed, so you have to kill, I will in this case have to kill all 3 of these ants. I want to go ahead and turn this light on. Now I'm also going to go ahead and give my player something to go and kill them with as well. So let's go ahead and give them a Salt Morningstar, probably one of the easiest things to use, and we'll go ahead and get that equipped. And now let's go ahead and go into play mode now. So you'll see now that these ants have spawned in, and I can go ahead and kill all 3 of these. And then you see, once I've gone ahead and killed all 3, this light will go ahead and turn on. So as you can see, the spawner offers you a little bit more control over what happens. Now, sometimes you might want this thing to go ahead and continually spawn creatures, but there is a little bit of a caveat with that as well. Let me go and show you what I mean. Let's go ahead and use a button to spawn in some worker ants, right? We're going to use a button. I'll go ahead and link this to our spawner, and we're going to say when the button is pressed, it will spawn the creatures in. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to spawn them in, but I'm only going to kill one of these guys. So I'm not going to kill all of them. I'm just going to kill the one over here, if I can. Let's see if I can get this guy. There we go. Now this one creature has been killed. These guys did see me, unfortunately. But you'll see, if I press the button to spawn in more creatures, it doesn't actually spawn in any more creatures. The only way the spawner will actually work again is if I've killed all the creatures in that volume, and then the spawner will go ahead and deactivate after that. As you can see, now that all 3 of those ants have been killed, the spawner will then go ahead and let me spawn new creatures back in. There may be times where you want to go ahead and make sure that more than one set of creatures have been killed before going and activating something. For example, let me go ahead and change this spawner so that instead of ants, we'll change this to rusties. There we go, so we'll change these over to rusties. And we might want to have a condition that we've killed both of the 3 worker ants and the 3 rusties before this door will open. How are we going to go ahead and do that? Well, the first thing we obviously need to do is go ahead and link the button to each of our creature spawners to make sure that they go ahead and spawn in. So we'll go ahead and do that. And then what you'd usually do if you only had one creature, you could link it to the door like this, and you could just say, open the door, right? However, if you go ahead and try this with 2 sets of creatures, we'll only need to kill one of these types of creatures for the doors to open. So for example, if we just did this, what you'll find is I'll go and spawn these guys in, and let's go ahead and take out the rusties. These guys are probably easier to take out. There you go. And then we'll take out this last one. And you can see that even though I didn't kill the red worker ants, well, that's kind of a problem, isn't it? This door still opened, but I didn't kill both sets of creatures. How can I make it so that I need to kill both of these creatures for this door to open? The answer to that is using some of these logic gizmos that you can find down the bottom. We're actually going to need 2 of these. The first one that we're going to need is the counter with condition. We're actually going to want 2 of these things right here. So I'm going to put one here, and I'm going to put one over here, just like this. Now, what I want to do is I want to make it so that when all of these creatures is going to get killed, it's going to increment this counter by 1. Okay, so and that's literally all it's going to do. It's going to increment the counter from 0, because it starts at 0 by default, and it's going to go to 1. And then we want the same for the other creatures just over here as well. So we're going to go ahead and make it increment that counter just like that. Now, both of these counters will be incremented by 1 when each of these are killed. To help us visualize that, I'm also going to go ahead and put a light on like this. So we're going to go and put a light for each of these counters, and we're going to put it on either side of the door. So here we go. So we're going to put a counter this a light this side, sorry, and we'll put, let's go rotate light that way, we'll put a light that side, and we'll say that when the condition has been met, it will go ahead and turn the light on. And then we don't want it to do anything if the condition fails. We're going to do this for both of these just as a visualizer. Here we go. So we'll do that one. We'll make it turn light on if the condition is passed. So when the counter equals 1, they will turn it on. And then if not, the light will stay off. So let's go ahead and have a look at this now. So you'll see now that if we go ahead and spawn our guys in, if I kill these guys up here, you'll see that when I go ahead and kill this ant, oh, and I don't want to die, so there you go. You can see though, when I killed that ant, that first light came on, right? And unfortunately, my player died, but that's okay. Luckily, I got a respawn right outside. But you can see that when I killed the ant, that first light came on there. Now, if we go ahead and kill the rusties, this other light will come on. So now how do we check that both these things have been triggered? Well, all we need to do is we need to go ahead and use this thing, which is the switch gate. So we're going to go ahead and put a switch gate between these 2 counters, just like this. And we're going to go ahead and set this to all, just like that. Then all we need to do is take a signal from each of these counter with conditions, and we're going to lead them into our all gate, just like that. And then we're going to take a signal from our all gate and we're going to point it directly to the door, just like this. And we're going to make the door open when the condition is passed and not do anything if the condition has failed. So let's go try this again, and hopefully I won't die this time. So here we go. We're going to spawn back here, and maybe this time I'll take out the rusties first, because they're a little bit more of a tricky conundrum. There we go. And as you can see, once we manage to go ahead and take these guys out, there you go, that first light is on. Then we'll go ahead and take out the worker ants here. As you can see then, the second light has come on, and now that both lights are on, this door has gone ahead and opened. And that's how you can go ahead and use some logic to go ahead and make it so that you need to kill several types of creatures in order to go ahead and make something open. Now, if you don't understand the logic or the counter with condition things that I'm showing right here, I do have another tutorial on how those all work. So there is a link to that, of course, in the playlist. So if you haven't found that yet, then go ahead and check the description. A link to my playlist is all in there as well. And you should be able to find the Logic Gizmos tutorial just in there, which will explain a bit more about how these counters and everything work. But for the purposes of this tutorial, that's how you can go ahead and make it so you need to kill several kinds of creatures. If you were going to add, say, a third type of creature, essentially you would go ahead and make another spawner and another counter, link those all up, and then again link them into the same all gate so you could have as many different types of creatures needing to be killed as possible. And once those are all killed, this door will go ahead and open. For the final part of the tutorial, I want to do something fun. I want to make it so that we have to kill a load of Ruz Ts before they will stop spawning in, but until we've done it, they're going to continually respawn over and over again. So essentially, we're going to make like a wave spawner. Now, how do we go ahead and do that? Well, let's go ahead and say that I always want to be fighting 3 Ruz Ts at once. Now, I could go ahead and use a spawner that's just set to spawn in 3 at a time. However, I always want the player to be fighting 3 pretty much at all times. So if we kill one, I want another one to go ahead and spawn in. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to get a timer, and we're going to link them up to all 3 of these spawners just like this. And then we're going to go ahead and set this timer to repeat every second. Now, we also want it to actually start on play, of course, and repeat. There we go, I clicked the wrong button. But as you can see, this timer now, when we go ahead and start in, will spawn all 3 of these, but then it's going to continually try and spawn them while the game is running. So remember, the spawners can only spawn in more creatures if the existing ones in that volume have already been killed. Until then, the timer will go ahead and just fire a blank event and it won't spawn anything else. So as you can see now, if I go ahead and come out of here, you'll see that 3 Ruz Ts spawn in, and here we go. So you can see that as soon as I kill one, then another one is going to go ahead and spawn in. And unfortunately, these guys are beating the crap out of my character at this point, so I definitely need to back off before I die. But as you can see, at this point, I'm always fighting 3 at once. Now, how can we make it so that after we've killed a certain amount of these things, they'll start spawning in? Let's say I have to kill maybe 5 of these things before they stop spawning. Now, obviously you can set this rate higher if you want to, but in order to do that, we're going to go ahead and use a counter with condition to go ahead and do this. This time we only need 1 of them, so we're going to put a counter just behind here, just like this, and then we're going to make this equal to the number of the Ruz Ts that we want to kill. So in this case, it's going to be 5, just like that. Now all we need to do is link our spawners into our counter with condition, just like this. So we're going to take each of our spawners and link it directly into that counter with condition, just like that. And every time a creature from one of these spawners is killed, it's going to increment our counter, right? So essentially the counter starts at 0, and then every time one is killed, it'll add 1 to this counter. As soon as this counter hits 5, we then want it to go ahead and stop spawning in anything else. And additionally, we want it to remove any currently spawned creatures as well. So in order to do that, first thing we need to do to make it stop the spawning is we obviously need to turn this counter into the timer here, and we need to make it stop the timer when we have the right condition. Now it's very important that you also check on condition failed that it does nothing, because we don't want it to stop the timer the first time we actually do a count. So that's also a very important thing to do. The other thing we want to do is link these things back into each of our spawners like this. So we're going to go ahead and do that, and do that, and do that. And then for each of these links, we're going to say that when the condition is passed, it's actually going to despawn the creatures. And when it fails, we're just going to do nothing. So we're going to despawn creatures if it fails, but if it passes, it's going to go ahead and just try again. So here we go. So we'll do this one for the second one. So we'll go despawn creatures if we pass and we have 5, and we'll go ahead and do nothing if we fail. And finally, for the last one, despawn if we have 5 and do nothing if we fail. Now, let's go ahead. I'm actually going to give myself some armor here as well, because otherwise I think I might get, without any armor, I think I might get beaten up a bit too much by these guys. So, yeah, let me go get myself maybe some, let me go and give myself some antlion armor. That'll probably be a good thing. I'll equip that to my player character. And then let's go ahead into play mode and test this out. So now what you should see is we'll come into here, and there's our 3 Ruz Ts. I'll go ahead and kill this one off, and as you can see, another one spawned in. So currently we've killed 1 of them. That's 2, 3, and 4. And there we go, we killed the 5th one, and as you can see, after we killed that 5th one, even though 2 more were there, they all got despawned, and therefore there's our 5 rusty kills that we needed in order to go ahead and progress and make that wave stop. Now additionally, you could go ahead and link this counter to like an event, so you can make it like open a door or something after that, but that's how you could go ahead and do like a wave spawn. So these would be really cool for like, say, if you're doing like a boss fight or something, say you've got an assistant manager fight going on, and occasionally you wanted him to send in like waves of enemies over a certain period of time, you could go ahead and use something like this, which is really cool. Now obviously this is just an isolated circuit, and you would need to go ahead and do more things to make this work in the bigger scheme of things, but that's just an example of some of the cool things that you can do with spawners. Before I go ahead and end off the tutorial, I do want to go ahead and mention one more thing about spawners that is actually very important to cover, and that is the spawn radius of the spawners. Now, if you're using a static spawner, like one of these, they will spawn exactly where you put them. So for example, if I was to put a ladybug right here and start the world, my ladybug would go and spawn in exactly the area I specified each and every time. However, if you go ahead and use not a static spawner but a creature spawner, they do have a radius around them depending on the size of the creature. So for example, if I move this into the middle of it, I'm going to go ahead and set up a switch between my spawner and my creature here. I'm going to go ahead, and when it's switched on, it will spawn the creatures, and when it's switched off, it'll despawn. Now, for small creatures, you'll find that the radius isn't that big. So you can see that, actually, what I should do as well is put down like some kind of marker below my spawner just so we can see it, right? So just so we know exactly where our spawner is, let me go and put like maybe one of these small triangle walls just under here. So our spawner is roughly, that's actually a bit bigger than I thought. Let me see if I can find something smaller. Maybe we'll put like a rock there or something like that. That'll probably be a better idea. So let's go and look under small harvestables, and then we can put down like a rock or a piece of sap or something. So yeah, let's go put down a pebblet right here. So this pebblet will tell me, hey, my spawner's there, right? So when we go into the world, we can see that that's where the spawner is. Now, if I go ahead and spawn it in, you can see the rusty kind of spawned pretty near it. And as you can see, the rusty, because it's a small creature, pretty much spawns very near, but you can see it does have a little bit of variation where it spawns. Now, the difference comes mainly in larger creatures. Larger creatures will actually spawn in a larger radius around the spawner. So for example, if I go ahead and say spawn in a roly-poly, it might not spawn exactly where the spawner is, but it will have a small radius around it. So for example, this time it spawned on it, but that time it kind of spawned over to the left a bit. This time it spawned like backwards. You can see it still spawns roughly in place, but this time, as you can see, it spawned a bit further away. This will become more apparent if you have several creatures being spawned. So say if I wanted to spawn 3 roly-polies, you'll see now that once I spawn these in, you can see they actually spawn in a bit of a radius around the spawner. Sometimes they'll spawn on top of each other, but it will always try and spread them out in some kind of radius around the spawner there. And you can see this one, it actually spawned all the way out here. So the bigger the creatures are, the wider the radius is going to be on your spawners. Now, this is a very important point, because if you're trying to make some small rooms to spawn creatures in, you might have to expand the size of your room depending on the size of your creature. Otherwise, what could happen is the creature that you may need to kill in order to progress in your map may spawn outside the area that you need it to, and therefore the player will get stuck and not be able to progress. So that's something you're going to need to bear in mind when setting up rooms for your spawners. So just bear in mind that the spawner radius is a thing. It was actually quite a lot more in previous patches, but the devs did actually reduce this, so you should be able to go ahead and not worry about it as much as you would need to, but just bear that in mind. The spawners do have a radius, and it does play a particularly large role in larger creatures, or if you're spawning in many creatures at once. So just bear that in mind. And guys, that is it. You now know pretty much everything there is to know about how to use the creature spawners. Now, there were some other gizmos and gadgets that we did use in this video, and if you're not sure about in particular the logic or the timer gizmos that you've seen, then please go ahead and check out my other Gizmo Labs tutorials on the logic and timers as well, because there is a couple of examples in there that do also concern creature spawners that you might find useful for your maps. And also, if you haven't seen the mega tutorial that pretty much covers the gizmos and gadgets on a pretty basic level, but it does go through all of them and how you can go ahead and use them, then please go ahead and check out the Playground's mega tutorial video as well, that's also linked in the video description. Finally, If you want to go ahead and submit your maps as well and have me check out some of the maps that you've made, go ahead and join the Discord, because we do have a section over there where you can go ahead and submit your play codes, and I'll be more than happy to go ahead and check them out. And of course, if you do want me to go ahead and make anything for you guys as well, say if you need a tutorial on about something in particular, then please go ahead and let me know, because I like doing all these kind of advanced circuits and everything, and honestly, I find it really fun. So if there is any other tutorials that you would like to see, then go ahead and also let me know in the comments or in my Discord as well. But that is going to be all for this tutorial, guys. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this one, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. So until then, bye!